Hey folks, this is Expressman, and this the part 2 of getting us started in Space Engineers. And I realized that I didn't actually finish my thought from the previous video because two things. One, you may notice it is nighttime, so pressing the L button actually turns on your suit lights. They do consume suit power a little faster, but again, they're not too bad. L. Also, you saw me go up to this. Now it's important. You can see the yellow outline here. This means that I have sort of that it's actually a conveyor port, but right now it's the doors by which I access this survivor kit. So when it's highlighted like that and I press I, you can see both the inventory of the survival kit as well as my suit inventory. Expressman's drop pod. Now, in a more complex, if you want to see the rest of the ship, you actually notice it says suit. And for whatever reason, suit shows you both what's in your suit as well as what your suit is directly accessing. And this little cube icon here gives you the entire ship or station's things. You can actually see there's other parts to this little drop pod, like the O2H2 generator, as we know, with its ice and the passenger seat. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they're all connected. So, for example, there's this little GPS data panel in the seat we grabbed in the previous video. Well, we didn't grab the data panel, but we accessed the seat, directly. So if I grab this and try to drag it, everything's dark. It's because there's no conveyance between the two. But I'm pretty sure, actually, if I grab the ice and dragged it to the drop pod, is it because the drop pod's maybe it might just because it's small conveyor, but theoretically things should be able to move. Sorry about that. Things should be able to move. Small conveyors have limitations over large conveyors. I'll get into that later. But you notice how this did not gray out, which is why I'm a little bit confused why it didn't take it. I'm guessing that it technically can convey to it, but there's no reason a survival kit would ever have ice, therefore it doesn't accept it. But you notice how it didn't go dark like everything. It's connected. The other thing though that I was going to tell you is when you run up to this thing and you see, again, that yellow highlighting, if you don't feel like pressing I and dragging everything over, you can actually hold Alt and middle click, and it will deposit everything it possibly can that's not a personal gear item into it automatically. And you notice it didn't deposit all of it. I could show you in the inventory, but you can also see in my volume, my suit volume, it didn't go down as low as it could have. And if I press I, you can see I still have 3.4 thousand stone. It's actually because I keep hitting the maximum capacity of the survival kit itself. So I could just sit here and keep feeding it here. But you see it hit the volume capacity is really limited. We didn't set a multiplier on that. We probably should have. There we go. So I got all of it out. So notice that when I did that deposit all, it didn't throw my tanks away. It didn't throw my tools away. It didn't throw my gun away. Now, if I was sitting on things like components, like if I had parts like steel tube and metal plate, it would have thrown that away. That's not personal gear. So that can be annoying sometimes. But when you're doing a lot of back and forth mining, drill, 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 come back, drill, 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 come back, it's really nice to just run up here, hold Alt, pop the middle mouse wheel, the middle button, and just keep going. All right, so another thing I want to show you before we start building stuff is obviously we've talked about charging yourself up at the survival kit. What we have not talked about is refilling your tanks. So the power is so slow to charge on these things, it drives me crazy. Okay, so we go back to this guy. Again, you can see the yellow highlighting, and we press I for inventory. And all we got to do is see my hydrogen bottles down to 51%. We can drag it in there, and you see it's 100%. We lost 25 ice, and we got a full bottle. So that's how you do that. There actually isn't an easier way. If you find yourself filling bottles often, you just want to carry 2 or 3 or 4. Some people even carry more. I like carrying 3 bottles. It's like the magic number. We can't make new bottles yet because I think it's too advanced for survival kit. So speaking of making things, I'm going back to here. There's actually a lot of buttons you can press to access it, and you can access it from. It doesn't really matter if you access it from the side screen. It's the same unit. It's just the survival kit. But if you access it from the screen, you can't move things in and out of inventory, whereas with here you can. So typically that's where I access it. You can still get control panel control of it just by clicking on the control panel tab up here. So what we want to do is actually go to another tab called production. This is where we make stuff. And now if you're in a big base with lots of assemblers, there's a lot of machines that could potentially build something for you. And that is represented in this drop down right here. We might, if we had, say, 5 assemblers, we would see each of those 5 assemblers. We don't. We just have Expressman's drop pod, which, if you remember, is what we named the survival kit. So that might be confusing to you. But this is the survival kit we have selected. Now, in the survival kit, you see the things that we can make. We can make computers. We can make construction comp. We can make data pads, displays, steel plate, solar cell, motors, interior plate, and girder. How much we need, that's something we'll talk about in a minute. What we need to do is start the foundations of a base, get a basic base going here. So what we need to do is we need to build a bunch of basic block. So we're going to go in here. We're going to go to production. Now, there's a couple different ways to do this. This is getting into my preference again, but that's right. If you toggle over here, you can actually build some more basic tools if you need to build basic tools. What we're going to do is the basic block just takes steel plate. So I'm just going to shift click on that, order up 100. Now, because it doesn't have the material to make more ingot bags, it's just going to skip it and go to the next thing in line that it can do, which is making steel plate. So you can see my iron levels here, 245, 238, 231. They're going down as I'm making steel plate. And of course over here, my steel plate, my steel plate is crawling upwards. I don't have to wait for all of this to build. I could come over here to inventory, see that steel plate, drag it over to my inventory, get out of here. So we need to start building light armor block. However, if you recall, we dragged the gun onto light armor block in our G menu. So we must press G, go to all blocks, and you see the very first thing in the top corner. It's kind of the fundamental building block of the game, pun intended, is the light armor block. So I'm going to drag that down to spot 5 because we'll worry about basic assemblers later. And that is our light armor block in its gray, crusty glory. Oops, it changed to small grid because I actually hovered over a small grid item. That's why it did that. Remember, if you just press the selection button again, which in this case is now 5, it changes it to large grid. And by the way, not everything is toggleable, but you can tell that it is because if you look at the G menu at the 5 spot, it has the little white plus. That means that there are basically selections within that item. So if I hit 6 and then hit 6 again, like there's no small grid version of this, you know, it's just, it is what it is. But if I hit 8, which has the solar panel, which it is grayed out because I don't have the materials for it, and you hit 8 again, it does, what does it do? Does it just flip it? Is that all it does? Solar panel. No, they take a different amount of material. Okay, one is large grid, one's small grid. That's why. Very interesting. Okay, so back to, I'm going to pop the 5 key. There's our light armor block. And pop it again. I keep looking at our ship. There's not a real special place I want it to be. Not for our demo. It's still sad to me that there's no iron readily available. This might actually be a case where I'd try to relocate the base where there is iron. But that just means I'm going to set up auto miners later, and they'll have to fly a little further. Now, you might notice, oops, another thing just happened there. You might notice that the maybe you don't like this alignment. You're like, wait, what does it have to be like that? What if I want my base to kind of go that way? You can actually use the, why isn't it working? Seriously. Oh, there we go. I use the numpad. Your laptop might not have a numpad. Obviously, if you have a regular PC, you do have a numpad. And I'm sure there's an alternate key for this. But if I use the 7913 keys, the corners of the numpad, I can rock this around. But then you're like, oh, I don't have a level base anymore. What do? I don't want a base at some weird kilter angle, right? So you can actually press, see if I remember right, B. See how it says gravity aligned placement is activated. So you're back to perfect level gravity alignment, and you're like, oh, but it still doesn't do what I want it to do. And now when I push the 1734 keys, it's all jacked up. It doesn't actually respond. You hit B again, local grid align. Hit B again, free placement. So what I want to do is basically get the one axis lined up how I want, and I'm not doing a very good job at that. There we go. And then obviously it's still not level, but if I hit B, snaps it to level, I click. Now, Space Engineers has a thing, I'm gonna hit 0 so it's not in the way, where when you build things, they basically have this raw stage, and it only uses a tiny bit of resources. I believe it uses 1 steel plate to build this, but it's not complete, it's not built out. And if I hold the welder with the 1 key here, and if you look over here on the right-hand side, it says 0% components required, steel plate 0.5, steel plate 1 of 20. Well, what the heckin' does that mean? Well, that functional line there below the 0% is sort of a fill line of how built it is. Watch, I will click briefly, and you can see that it's 6% functional. I'm not sure why the required thing filled. Oh, it's because it says I have. So why you see steel plate twice is there's 5 steel plate above functional and 20 steel plate below functional. So to build this completely would take 25 steel plate. Space Engineers has this concept where you can have functional machines that aren't necessarily fully built, which is great when you think about damage models. So if I just do some little clicks here, you can see 12, 18, 25, and there's the animated stage. You can see it's looking a little more built. 37, normally I just hold down and now it's 100%. It looks completely built. It took 25 blocks, and there we go. Weirdly, though, in terms of structural strength, an unwelded block is as strong as a welded block. That additional strength really only matters when it comes to damage. If you so much as breathe on these unwelded blocks, they will break. So I'm intentionally making a long line here, and this will, I'm out of steel plate. Now, if I wanted to be really miserly, I could actually grind that down, get my steel plate back, and use this to extend this further, but it's already big enough to do what we need it to do. So I'm going to fly over to our ship because it's faster. Anyway, and then let's hit 0 to get that out of the way. Let's do a quick power fill up while we are here. Entertain yourself with a ditty, and we need more steel plate. So I'm going to come back here, hit I, go to production, and oh look, we couldn't even finish the order that we had for steel plate because we ran out of iron. So this is the fun of the grind when you're in the early game. We have to grab the old thing, mining thing. We don't want to fall or we'll get hurt. So we fly down there. We hit L for lights. You can see I can hit F, 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 pick those guys up. We don't, whatever. I'll just keep going. It doesn't matter. Again, left clicking and holding F. If I didn't hold F, it would just build up a bunch of rocks in the bottom here, and I could pick them up then with, but it's just faster and tidier to hold F down. I've done a bunch of different types of mining. There's different tactics that you can take. A lot of people like to sidle up to a hill and then use collection hoppers to automatically collect. If we were right by a big hill, I'd consider that, but we're not. But it also takes time and resources just to set up that scenario. So I can do the alt middle click thing here. And remember, we had a bunch of those ingot bags ordered. So I alt clicked, it all of a sudden has the stone it needs to continue to make the ingot bags. Now it will make those ingot bags till it can't. And then it'll be like, well, is there anything else in line that I can make? And because the ingots made iron and because we have steel plate also in the build queue, as soon as it can't make the ingot bags, it will continue to make the steel plate until either they're all made or it runs out of iron again. I'm alt middle clicking again just to continue to feed my my stone into this miserly machine. But this is kind of the early game grind, and you just keep going here and making. See, it's not making steel because it is making the ingot bags. As soon as it can't make the ingot bags, it will move on. So the goal is we want a minimal functioning base. Well, there's a couple different goals. And let me explain goals right now, because you're like, why are we here? What are we even doing? The immediate goal is to get a base with power. The intermediate goal, no, that would mean between then and there. We'll have a base with power really soon. The goal after that would be to get up to basic assembler, basic refinery. But those are still pretty limited. So the goal after that is to get to full assembler, full refinery. And the goal after that is to get a cryo chamber, which is the bed thing that you sleep in when you exit the server. So I try to do all of this in one sitting, and I'm going really slow for you guys. Normally I'm flying through this. And then the goal becomes build a flying miner, a mining vehicle to help you mine much quicker. And then the goal is build an orbit capable miner so that you can go up to the asteroids and get the last two materials that you need that you cannot get on planet, which is uranium and platinum. Uranium and platinum allow you to power nuclear reactors, which, as you can imagine, is the most fantastic source of power. And platinum is needed for building like elite level tools and various other kind of high level components that are awesome. So you can see it did what I said it would do. It built all the ingot out it could, and then it did all the iron it could. It actually ran out before it even got through that, which is pretty disappointing. I'll drag more of my stone into there. So that if I put a multiplier on the building capacity, which I should have, it'd stop up less. But we got more steel now. What we need to do is we're going to start with wind power. You have two power. Initially, you have two power options. You have wind option and solar option. We're going to go with wind because it generates a lot more power, and B, it generates it day or night. Obviously, solar power does not generate day or night. Now, wind turbines are affected by your height. So we're going to go, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. People will argue with what the optimal height is. I think 10 is adequate. Now let's come over here. I'm gonna hit 2 for my grinder. Grind that guy away, get my 1 plate back. And now we need to make a wind turbine. Well, wind turbines take more than steel plate, if you can imagine. So we need to find out what we need, and we need to make it. So, you know what though, real quick, this dude, we gotta throw more. Sometimes I like to fall and then let myself. I will push. What is happening? Oh, whatever. My flight thing at the bottom. And so let me revisit. Oh, this is what happens because I wasn't pushing F. Revisiting goals. So really, what you want to do, because this is a sandbox game, is that, I mean, the goal can be whatever you want. What my goal is to be able to build, like, quickly build essentially in-game level ships. So, you know, corvettes, frigates, cruisers, destroyers, battleships, however you want to classify those things, and just build them and maybe build additional bases. And it just takes a lot of resources, but you can automate so many things. And I actually have a video right now on my channel. In fact, it's the only other Space Engineers video right now showing how I set up my auto miner, which is fantastic. We're not going to get to auto miner tonight, but it's great. Now, you might have noticed that it didn't use up all the stone in there, and you're like, why didn't it use up all the stone? Because it takes a certain amount of stone to make one of those or to do one of those ingot bags. So that 60 in there apparently wasn't enough. So that's why that was in there. Go back to production. Okay, so we need now is a wind turbine. There's a couple different ways of doing this. The hard way is we see it on our menu. It's number 7. I used to do this for a long time. We're like, oh, this is literally sitting here and going, okay, there's 30 interior plate, but also another 10 interior plate. So 40 interior plate, 24 girder, 20 construction tromp, 8 motor, 2 computer. Boom, short-term memory. Go into the build the production thing, enter all those amounts in, and take what comes out. That's one way to do it. That is absolutely the hard way to do it. The other way to do it is, well, there's a couple. Let's see if I can remember this one. Is it? Nope, that was the withdraw trick. Yep. Yeah, so I shift clicked with this thing ghost hidden in here. Now if I go into production, yep, you'll see it ordered exactly what's needed for that. So that was shift clicking on the survival kit with this thing active. That's a good way to do it. The other way I like to do it is just like with building the armor block, you really only need like one piece, which in this case is interior plate. It's not. So let me grab this interior plate. Let me throw the stone in there. So if I grab this interior plate and then I fly, I gotta watch my hydrogen levels and my power levels. I fly up here. And see, it's a little finicky because if you're too close, it won't let you place it, and if you're too far, it won't let you place it. So you gotta be. And then, by the way, Q and E is your upright balance buttons. So we click, and it built that. Let me go back to my welder, but that's it, right? Like that's it. So what I typically do is I keep a bunch of resources on my person at one time to be able to place these things. And then if you just go up and thought it was middle click. Is it messing up? No, it's right click. Right click. It says components added to build planner. Well, what the heck does that mean? Let's land over here. We got to go get charged. But if I hit G menu again, remember the G menu? there's actually this little, it's behind me. There's this little guy in the bottom right, and it's called Build Planner, and this is things you anticipate building. And you can see actually I have 2 wind turbines in there. That's because the first time I clicked, it added it to when I did the shift click thing, it added it to Build Planner, and then when I did the right click thing on the skeleton, it added it to Build Planner. So I can actually right click to clear that off and left one of them in the Build Planner. The other thing I could have done, I can click those, right click both of those away so that I have nothing in Build Planner, and then come back here to, I think it's large blocks. There's a couple ways to find it, and I can actually drag the wind turbine down to the Build Planner, and it's in the Build Planner. Now, what's the point of having it in the Build Planner? Well, glad you asked. It allows us to then go up to this guy, and if we center click on it, it will try to withdraw everything you need that's currently on your Build Planner. Now, if there's a bunch of things in your Build Planner, I think you're limited to 3 or 5. It will try to withdraw everything. Notice it said, I gotta get power. Notice it said I can't withdraw 10 interior plates. I was short 10. I was short 10 because if you remember just a minute ago, I snuck 10 out of there. So messed with the accounting. But that does mean that I have that missing 10 on my person. So I can actually make it. It's just Build Planner's mad at me. So now if I fly up here and weld, which is just holding the left click, hold it, hold it, hold it. Nice. And let's come over here. Let's land. Now the problem is it's still in my Build Planner. So like can't withdraw in 10 interior plates. So I can go to the G. I don't usually create a scenario in which it does mismatch like that. I can just right click and remove it. It's gone. It's done. So that is a wind turbine. It is generating power right now. The amount of power it generates has to do with environmental conditions, height, proximity to obstacles, other things in the way, weather conditions. If a windstorm comes, it'll run faster. If a fog comes, it'll run slower. It kind of looks not optimal to me right now. That might have to be something I fix, but it should be optimal. It's high. It's not obstructed. When we add anything with a blue panel in here, we'll be able to look at its details. I don't think it has a blue panel. No, it doesn't. When we add anything with a blue panel, we can actually look at its performance specifics. So this grid is powered. There's no concept of like electrical wires in Space Engineers. There's just a concept of grids. So our drop pod is a grid. And actually, if we go to the drop pod, we can actually see it has a grid name. So we could do this from the seat or anywhere, but I'm just going to go over here, click K. That just shortcuts me to the control panel. And actually, we don't want the control panel. We want the info tab. And in the info tab, we can see over on the right-hand side here, it says grid name, respawn planet pod, convert to ship, convert to station. So this is a grid with we call it a named grid because there are default grids that do not have names. They have numbers. This would not be a named grid because it's whatever name Space Engineers came up with for it when I created it, but I can change its name when I have a blue panel. So this is a grid. So Space Engineers thinks of things as grids. So everything on this grid is one power connection, so to speak. So if I were to put something down here, it would be powered by that wind turbine. Of course, the amount of power matters. I can easily put too many machines on here for this thing to handle. That's another problem we're going to solve. But we now have a powered grid, which is a very important step toward establishing our base. Now, a couple things going on here. One, we are wasting this power. All the power it's generating is not going into batteries. It's not even going to a machine. It's just going nowhere. So that's a bummer we're going to have to fix. The other thing is, obviously, we want some better machines than what we got on our drop pod. And eventually, we want to move that survival kit over here so that it's on a proper base and not on a drop pod that might disappear. And will most definitely run out of power itself at some point here. So I'm going to leave a spot here for the battery, although I could do the battery on the side. I'm a little particular about how you start this. You'll see why. The next thing we need to build is a basic refinery. So, I don't. We know this is going to take more mining, right? So here we go. Maybe I'll show you this. So if you dislike your server's settings, now this is now this is server, right? This is a game session. But first of all, let's just save progress, yes, and then we will exit to main menu. If you get completely out of the server or the session, same thing, it sees it the same. And we go to load game. And we have YouTube tutorial game. I select that. There's a hesitation because I guess it's loading information. I click edit settings. I love the little screenshot thumbnail it created. That's weirdly appropriate. And then we go back to advanced, and this should be familiar. This is what we used when we set up the world the first time. You can see block inventory size, and that would be reflective of how much our everything that is a block can hold storage wise, including our survival kit. So if I switch it from realistic to 10x, we will see a difference. And for the sake of this tutorial moving along, we'll do that. I'm also, again, for the sake of the tutorial, going to crank the welding speed up to X5, grinding speed, whatever, it doesn't matter that much, but X5. And we're just going to click OK and OK. Now we can reload the world. Click on it. Why you hesitate? Why? So that will solve our problems. Again, if the server has those settings intentionally, that's obviously something that you need to use your engineering whiz to overcome those limitations. But we're just going to change the server settings. Again, love watching. That's some sort of major hydrogen fire going on there. That's pretty great. Okay, so now if you recall, it wouldn't take all of my resources when I... Let's pick these guys up. Crouch. I could start drilling sideways if I want, but I don't know. The nice thing about drilling down is everything falls straight down. You don't leave like a trail of unpicked up stuff. So I'm about to fill my suit. You can see it's redlined right there. And there it's full. Let's fly out of here. Come on. And now I'm going to do that alt middle click thing. And it took everything. Look at my inventory. It's empty. So it took it all that time. That's what we want to see. So we can go back to production, and you can see, well, actually let's go back to inventory. You can see it had, I think, close to 6,000. Now it has 5,000. That's like how we really we can crank it out here. Also, I can go back into production and just literally shift click, queue up a couple thousand more ingots. It's more than we'll ever use, but I want to keep that queue stuffed. That's an efficiency play. Do 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 do. Oh, crouch. So yeah, our next move here, because we now have a powered grid, is to build a basic refinery, build a basic assembler, and that will increase the amount of things that we're able to refine. Remember, we went around in the first video and we tried to identify all of those different elements. Well, the thing is, we can't take any of those elements into the survival kit. It only processes this, basic earth. And so when we get the basic refinery, we'll be able to refine several different types, alt middle button, several different types of resources, but not all of them. For example, remember the gold and silver we found. We can't process that. I'm pretty sure we can't process the magnesium. I think we can process everything else. I mean, the important things are iron, silicon, and nickel, which it does process. Let's go ahead and fill our suit while we wait for those things. And then we're going to make the things that we need for... So I know on the number 6 spot by default, we have the basic refinery. So I'm going to do that trick that we did earlier, which is where we shift middle click. Why does it say it's not in the let's just shift left click? Nope. Control left click. Nope. Shift right click. Shift. Why is it not working? It worked just a minute ago. What was my instructions to me? Please tell me. Because it worked before. All right, remember the other way. Well, again, I'll just show you, like, my preferred method, by the way, is to just have an excess of usually steel plate, interior plate, and comp on me. So if I go into production, if I just hit control a few times and click, there's some steel plate, there's some interior plate, and there's some comp. I just like to have like a little surplus of that on me. Now, if I pulled this into my suit and then I went and mined and I did that whole alt middle button thing, it would pitch this out along with the rock. So that's something to keep in mind. But how are we doing for... Okay, it's almost done. We got steel plate in there. I think that's all we need anyway. So what I typically do is, I have that little bank of materials on me at all times, and I can place this guy now. So what's very important when you start this placing, and why I'm fussy about it, is they are conveyor ports matter. So as you can see, that yellow box conveyor port there, and then if we rotate, and I'm just literally moving my whole character around, so it has one on each side. Now they're not directional. There's not an in, there's not an out. They're always, unless it's a sorting box, there's no concept of direction. I mean, everything is bidirectional. So we just want to place this. There's also not a top or a bottom conveyor, so it's literally just side to side there. I'm just gonna fly to get a better position, and I want it literally 1, 2, 3 over. So I'm gonna click. And then I'm going to hit my welder, which is my 1 key, and I'm just going to come over to it and right click. This is the typical way I use Build Planner. So now, and the cool thing is, because I did that, Build Planner, if I partially built this, like say I welded on it a little bit, Build Planner would know the difference, so that when I right click on it, it's only adding the components I need to finish it. So it's actually what it loaded for me to finish it is everything minus 1 steel plate, because it took 1 steel plate to build that initial frame. So now I can hold shift to run like any game. I come over here, and now if I were to middle click, it would. So here's the other way I normally operate. I build just a lot of everything. I can't do that in a survival kit, but I usually have like a huge bank of all the materials. So I just come over here, I middle click, and boom, I have everything in my inventory that I need. And then I just run over and weld it. It's a very fast routine. But of course, these things they haven't been ordered yet, which is, what is it? Shift middle click? Yeah, there it is. So now it's actually making the things I need. You can see what it ordered. It's got a couple motors in there, a couple computers. So now it'll be able to make exactly what I need to pull out to make the basic refinery. Now, the good news is I can use the basic refinery immediately. I can start feeding iron into it. I can start feeding nickel into it. The bad news is it has very limited storage in and of itself. So this is a little bit of a delicate balancing game where I'm trying to use these things while trying to build the things they need, because then I have to build a storage container, but that takes components that I can only build if I have a basic assembler. But if I have a basic assembler and a basic refinery running at the same time, guess what starts to become inadequate? Yeah, the one single. So then I have to add another wind turbine, but that means that, you know, those take resources too. So it's a little bit of a circular dance, but you get through it. This is like the grindy part. Um, so eventually our goal is to have a basic assembler right here, and a cargo container, small cargo container right there, for storing everything. Those two things put out. And these are really just transitional to get us to a proper full-blown assembler and a prop. They don't have like a, it's not like advanced assembler or advanced refinery. The advanced ones they just call assembler refinery. All right, so I think hopefully our components are made here. If I middle click, we're short 48 steel plate and 10 motors. Let's just go in and look what's going on here. Ah, we're out. We're just out again. Okay, so I can just come over here, weld this guy up partially. And you can see over here that I am short 10 motors, but that's all. I'm just short 10 motors. So hit my line. Whoop. And we'll fill this up again. So yep, it's kind of cyclical. It's great when you're playing with somebody because one of you can focus on this kind of thing, and it just accelerates everything faster. And of course, if that's all the more true if there's 2 or 3 or 4 of you, you get through this part pretty quick. Now I'm going to do my alt middle click thing that did pitch out any of that excess steel I grabbed earlier. It's okay. Now again, we're not going to get our other components built exactly as we hoped. I'll go to production. See, it still has 75 steel, but I had used steel that I was already in my inventory. So again, a little mismatch there. Normally I don't care. Extra steel is great to have around. But if I really want to prioritize, I can right click. I also could have dragged those to the back of the queue. But so now the next thing in the queue is I could queue, you know, some steel plate behind it, like shift click. There's 100. But I know that as soon as it runs out of stone, it'll stop making ingot bags. It'll start making motors. I need those 10 motors to finish the assembler. And then it'll get on to making some of that steel plate because I know I always need steel plate. I think I'm going to wrap that up for this video. I'll kind of come back when I have the resources to build the next thing and maybe a couple wind turbines. And we'll go from there. So yeah, we'll do that. In the next video, we will build the basic stuff. We'll get our specific mining going for the specific materials. And we should be able to finish it with a proper, we'll build a battery. We'll build several more wind turbines, and we hopefully, maybe, be able to finish it with that proper assembler and proper refinery, and that's when things really start to move. I am Expressman. This has been Getting Started with Space Engineers Part 2. I will see you in the next video.